It's Cougar Sports Saturday.
That's caught! Touchdown! Stayed inside the boundary and gets in for 6.
Cougar Sports Saturday, a presentation of KSL Sports.
Richie right to the rim, driving score! He would not be denied!
BYU Sports Talk by Cougar fans for Cougar fans. Sponsored by Any Hour Services, Electrical, Plumbing, Heating, and Air. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Kyle Ireland. On Utah's legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM and 1160 AM.
Welcome back into Cougar Sports Saturday, powered by KSL Sports. It's a game day edition for football and men's basketball, as BYU, number 7 in men's basketball, is ready to take on the number 3 UCONN Huskies a little under 3 hours from now. Mitch, we were talking during the break, and I want to pose this question to you again. Where do you think this game ranks in BYU basketball history? Because obviously, like, the tournament games are of more value, but like just regular season, this has got to be like a top 5, top 10 game for BYU.
It's huge. I mean, I would say that it's probably a top 5 regular season game in BYU basketball history. When you consider the quality of the opponent, UConn, I think, is one of the great brands in the sport, and they've been a winner this whole century. And at the moment in time where BYU's at as a top 10 team, trying to prove its worth, I think it's huge. I mean, you could go back to the 90s where there were some games against Maui. Remember where they played number 1 Duke in the Maui Invitational Championship game? That was huge when Maui was a really big deal back in those days. There's been games, but this one's just significant because it creates an opportunity to validate everything that BYU's building. And I don't think you want to put too much stock into games in November 15th because still college basketball, it's a long season. You got so many opportunities in Quad 1, opportunities in the Big 12. So you're going to be fine win or lose in this game. But I think it would just be a real moment to really earn some respect out on the East Coast. Because the last time BYU traveled out east, Newark, New Jersey, BYU got hammered against Bama. The last regular season game out on the East Coast with Kevin Young's program, they got crushed by Providence. So maybe you earn a little bit of clout, a little bit of respect out east if you could get this win. And UConn head coach Dan Hurley, when he sees BYU, he's got some respect for the Cougars.
When you watch clips of BYU and AJ and Saunders, they got one of the best point guards in the country. I mean, when you see that quality on film, I mean, you get scared straight. You get things that worked the first 3 games won't work. But it's fun. We're excited to get a chance to go play in Boston this weekend versus one of the best teams in the country. So it should be fun.
Do you buy that? Is that his true feeling that he's just, we're so scared about BYU? I mean, BYU's talent is really good. They got one of the best trios in college basketball. DeBonsa, Saunders, Rob Wright. They showed you on Tuesday against Delaware, dropping 70 points between those 3. Any one of those guys could go off for 30 points. So that is scary. But do you think that UConn's actually respecting BYU? Because I get the sense that it's like, we've been the top dogs. BYU, you might think you're the new top dog, but you're coming out to East Coast. We're going to show you what this is all about. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I think it was a little bit of tongue-in-cheek. And knowing how Hurley has always been kind of a quote machine, how'd you read those quotes?
Yeah, I can see that, but I also look at it this way, Mitch, because they were able to come to an agreement to play BYU on a neutral court. Not everybody in the country is willing to do that.
This is not a neutral court, Kyle.
I know it's
not
technically
be a neutral
not.
Court. This is going to be a pro UConn crowd. BYU is going into a road game.
Sure,
I mean, this is going to be
but the fact that
revved up crowd.
It's an NBA court. It's big time. It's on network TV. Like, there's a lot to this game.
Sure,
that other teams might not want to face BYU in, and so I'll give Hurley that. The fact that they were willing to play this game against BYU. It's cool for AJ to be able to go back home, hometown game for him. But I do think that, it's one of those games, Mitch, where we're going to look back when the committee's looking at resumes, and this game is going to look good for whoever comes out victorious in this game.
I think that's a great point because say if BYU's like a 2 seed line or maybe get crazy and think 1 seed, this game could put you over the top to get into that conversation. So I think that there is some staying power because I think both of these teams are really good, and they're going to be really good. They're going to be at least Sweet 16 contenders, maybe Final Four good. I think both these teams are excellent. It's just who comes out on top. This could get a real signature victory to any one of these resumes.
Yeah, and you look at the way that both of these teams have framed their non-conference schedules. This is one of those games that's, it's awesome for both teams as far as their schedule before league play is concerned. I think for BYU, Mitch, I'm looking to see how they come out to start this game. If they can kind of weather the storm. You mentioned the fact that it's going to be a hornet's nest for the fan base as far as, UConn fans being there. And it'll be
90 minutes away from Stores.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how many BYU fans show up for this game. Obviously, like all the way across the country. So interested to see how many fans travel out. But also BYU has a large alumni base, and so there's going to be fans on the East Coast that make the trip for that game. But
there was a prominent BYU flag today at College Game Day in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So BYU fans will always show up, but you're going to be outnumbered in this game. Like what I said this earlier in the week on Cougar Tracks, like what BYU fans dished out to Villanova in Vegas. That was a road game for Villanova, basically. I mean, it was Marriott Center South. You're going on the road. This is going to be Stores. I'm trying to think what's the direction from. I got my Northeast geography in my head is not the greatest, but it's going to feel like a UConn home game. But it's a great barometer. And this is what Kevin Young and Chris Burgess, when they put together the schedule, that's what they wanted. Brian Santiago, they felt like they had a team that had national championship capabilities. Well, here's a national championship type of opponent, is UConn. 2 of the last 3 titles has been Dan Hurley and these Huskies. So you get a real sense of where you're at as a team and a program going up against these guys. So it's a great barometer. I think BYU is going to be competitive in this one. I want to see how BYU stacks up against Taurus Reed, 6'11", 265-pound big man for UConn. Keba Keita, that's going to be the matchup to watch, I think, in this game, because can BYU dominate on the glass? That will be critical in this game. That was an area of focus going into the Delaware game, and I kind of think Kevin Young was laying the foundation, groundwork, say, not only for Delaware, but for this one, because UConn will get after you on the glass with Reed, Caravan, 6'8", 230. This is a good team. And Jalen Stewart as well, solo ball. Again, 4 of their 5 starters were guys that were on their team last year. The only guy that wasn't, Silas DeMary, guard transfer from Georgia. BYU pursued him a little bit in the portal cycle. This is a good UConn team. And I think they can also, you go back to 2 years ago when they played Sweet 16 games in Boston and Elite 8 games, they put together massive runs. Can BYU avoid a big 6-0 or 8, 10, 12-0 run against UConn? Because I think in this environment, that could be an opportunity for UConn to really create some separation with some quick runs on BYU. Can the Cougars avoid that? That's going to be huge in this game as well, too.
Yeah, the way that they started off the game on Tuesday, Mitch, against Delaware, that can't happen tonight for BYU, or else it's going to be a wrap early, because UConn they'll put their foot down and they will impose their will. BYU has to be able to start strong, and it will be interesting. We talked earlier in the show about the Moo Davis situation, and Dawson Baker getting his second potential start in a row tonight.
Again, no official word.
No official word on that.
BYU.
I'm just projecting here, and if BYU has to do that again, I'm interested to see, does Rob Wright start the way that he did against Delaware? Does he try and kind of take over? It seemed like Rob initiated himself into the offense, or injected some life into the offense there by just saying like, hey, we need somebody to go out and make things happen. A guy to go and get a bucket. BYU has multiple guys that are able to do that this season. And if AJ, I'm interested to see how he kind of plays with this game as well, Mitch, because there's a lot being made about him going back home, and the national stories that have come out about him this week are the stars getting, bright for him. The fact that, at the end of the day, this is just a basketball game. I want to see AJ go out and do his thing. I wanted to see, the publicity that is around this game, how that kind of maybe affects BYU. and AJ?
I want to see, too, with AJ and this team in general, the three-point shooting that they showed in the second half against Delaware. I want that to continue against UConn. They knocked down 11 threes in the second half against Delaware. I still believe that BYU's potential and ceiling can be reached only if that three-point shooting is falling. Now, I don't think this is a team where live by the three, die by the three. There's been BYU teams in the past, think back to 2 years ago when they lost to a team like Duquesne in the Big Dance. That was a cliche, live by the three, die by the three. This team is much better than that. They can win in a lot of different ways. But I still think that this team, that if they want to be the absolute headache for opposing defenses, they've got to be able to knock down the three at a high clip. And I just think, to your point about strong start, I think that would help settle the nerves a little bit, because I'm sure it'll be a loud environment. Knock down a few threes, just settle in, and then it becomes basketball, and then it doesn't become worrying about the crowd. I think this team, I mean, you think about AJ, Rob Wright, even Richie, all these guys have played in NBA venues. Like, it's kind of a part of the deal. I mean, AJ's been playing in NBA venues since he was probably 15 years old. Same with Rob Wright when he was at Montverde. I mean, these guys have played in huge stages their whole basketball careers, and they're still young guys. But this is what they do. They're used to this. And I just think it's, again, a chance to see how you stack up against a program that's been the standard, I think, in college basketball this quarter century. And Dan Hurley's one of the best coaches in the sport. And I think, again, if you win this one, to me, you look at BYU and say they're number 2 in the country, right behind Houston, I think, in the rankings, at least number 3. So you'd be knocking on the doorstep of making a case to be the number 1 team in the land. And I can't believe I'm saying that, Kyle, for BYU basketball on November 15th, but
be a massive
that's
win.
what's on the line here.
If you're projecting how the game goes tonight, Mitch, do you think if BYU comes out with a win, it's because they were able to shoot lights out? You mentioned the three-point shooting. Like, what does a win look like for this BYU team? Are they able to have an awesome defensive performance like Keba Keita had against Villanova? What does it look like for a win?
Probably defensively, because UConn probably doesn't want to go into the up-tempo style of play that BYU thrives in. Like, go back to that Tuesday night against Delaware when BYU's getting up and down the floor, man. That's a thing of beauty, the way they were playing offensively. The putback dunk from AJ was outstanding. I mean, BYU, when they're getting up and down the court, they can gash anyone and put it on you quick. So I would think UConn's going to want to try to maybe slow it down a little bit, get deep into the shot clock. So I think BYU defensively has got to be able to be at their best, and that's still maybe the big question for this group, especially with the status of Kennard Davis still kind of up in the air. I mean, on the heels of an alleged DUI, knowing what we know about BYU, we tend to think probably not going to play in that first game after these allegations. Long term, we'll see what happens there. But he's kind of one of the top guys defensively for the Cougars, and they changed quite a bit. Kevin Young acknowledged that after the Delaware game, where not having Moo Davis in that starting 5 was a pretty big deal to their defensive efforts. But BYU's got to be great defensively. They've got to be good on the glass, too. I think that's where the game will be decided. And then if you can hit those three-point shots, that can maybe put you in a spot to, kind of put things over the top and maybe create some separation. But defensively, that's where this game's going to be won. What about for you, real quick?
Yeah, I think the three-point shooting that you alluded to earlier is going to be the key here. And it was nice to see BYU get into a nice rhythm in the second half against Delaware, because at the end of the day, Mitch, I truly believe that the big three, AJ DeBonsa, Rob Wright, and Richie Saunders, if all three of those guys are clicking, BYU is going to play well in this game and will for the season as well. This season is going to go as far as those guys take them.
Let's get back to the gridiron next. Who's in, who's out for BYU football on the injury report? We'll hit on that next here on Cougar Sports Saturday.